On August the 24th, the National Hurricane Center in Florida scrambled its Hurricane Hunter aircraft. Their mission, to fly into the heart of a powerful new storm that was building over the Bahamas. It was the 11th in a busy season and had been given the name Katrina. Like all tropical storms, Katrina was powered by the surface of the ocean. Warm, moist air is sucked high into the atmosphere, then sent speeding back down to create an immense whirlpool of supercharged wind and rain. To build a forensic profile of Katrina, the hurricane hunters carried a sophisticated armory of instruments and sensors. These sondes are dropped directly into the storm to measure wind speed and air pressure. The hunters approached their quarry at 41,000 feet. Cameras recorded what they saw. As they sped through Katrina's turbulent outer edges, the scientists were astonished to see that the huge storm had already formed a telltale eye, an immense 30-mile-wide funnel of ice and wind. As the streams of data were being fed back to supercomputers at the Hurricane Center in Florida, Katrina's wind speeds topped the critical limit of 74 miles per hour. So on August the 25th, she was promoted to hurricane status. Hours later, Katrina hit the Florida coast as a Category 1 hurricane. The storm chasers were there to greet her.
The eye wall is here. As you can see, the winds are very strong. The sand is blowing. This is getting really intense. It's blinding sand. You can't see anything. That's a bright one.
Across Florida, Katrina caused extensive flooding. But over land, she was deprived of the energy of the ocean and began to power down. But then Katrina crossed into the Gulf of Mexico and was back over the ocean. Ivor Van Heerden, America's leading hurricane expert, feared what would happen next. He knew that the warm waters of the Gulf would power Katrina up again and turn her into a monster.
Katrina then came into the Gulf of Mexico, where water temperatures have been record high, and it just grew very, very rapidly. I don't think we've ever seen a hurricane spin up so rapidly from a Category 1 to a Category 5.
A Category 5 hurricane has the equivalent power of 100 atomic bombs. Now Katrina headed straight towards the American Gulf Coast.
Look at that. The outer bands go all the way over. As far down as you can see, it's a little bright down there. But this is the outer bands it's coming through now. This is Katrina.
Storm chaser Mike Tice had raced from Florida to the Gulf to record Katrina's arrival. He was in the city of Gulfport as the hurricane moved in. Hurricanes pack a double punch. They bring severe winds, but their most deadly ingredient is water. 90% of hurricane deaths are drownings. What happens is that the hurricane presses down onto the surface of the ocean, forcing the water to rise like an unnaturally high and violent tide. It's called the storm surge.
It comes in swells. It's like it almost looks gentle, like these rolling kind of waves that come in. And then when that rolling wave comes in, then the next one builds on top of that, and it just keeps going higher and higher like that.
Tice was at a Gulfport motel when the storm surge hit. Waves more than 20 feet high rushed inland.
These walls are going to start coming in. This lady was in one of the first floor rooms, and I had alerted these Navy guys to it, and she would have passed away if we wouldn't have saved her, because she was trapped in her room already. She couldn't open the door because of the weight of the water.
Katrina started by trashing the hotel lobby.
Well, we're in the lobby here of our hotel. We're completely underwater in this first floor here. There's chairs floating by. The glass is broke. There's a car. We got a car that's getting ready to come right in the lobby now. We got a car in our lobby here. Doors are breaking. How's this door? We got things falling apart all around us now.
Katrina's storm surge was so powerful, it turned the storm chasers into the quarry. They had to find safety fast.
Here we are on the 4th floor here. The roof collapsed on this building below me. See, the roof broke off. The surge is dramatically risen here. This is just incredibly dramatic. This is Mother Nature at her worst right here. There was a Days Inn just a half a mile away that was a concrete structure, and it was completely demolished, just foundation, that's all that was left.
The scientists plotting Katrina's path had feared that she would score a direct and devastating hit on the city of New Orleans. But at the last minute, the eye of the storm veered to the east. Even so, there was no escaping Katrina's enormous power, for New Orleans turned out to be uniquely vulnerable. Sergeant Billy Gamillion was one of the first federal officers on the spot when Katrina struck. He knew the city and its weaknesses well.
New Orleans is entirely surrounded by water, and the city is 12 to 16 feet below sea level, depending upon where you are. So basically, New Orleans is a big bowl.
Running straight into the bowl is a ship canal. As Katrina swept past, it was turned into a storm surge superhighway, channeling water with missile-like speed into barriers called levees. They were supposed to protect the city.
Everybody believed those levees would hold. They broke, and that's why we had the flooding.
As the levees were breached, floodwater surged into the low-lying eastern districts of New Orleans. This is where Africa Brumfeld lived with her family. Their house was 12 feet below sea level, and for Africa, the collapse of the levees had swift and disastrous consequences.
Between midnight and 5, it was really bad. It was scary. It sounded like a train riding the roof of your house. around 5 a.m., the electricity went off. And the house was shaking. It sounded like the walls were trying to just fall apart. And it was a scary feeling. And I started to feel like I was in a coffin. About an hour to 2 hours later, there was water, and it never stopped coming in. And it continued to rise, and it continued to rise. And I was thinking, if my house is 4 feet off the ground and the water is in my house, I'm only 5'1", and it's in my house about 2 feet. There's no way that I'm getting outside without going for a nice swim. The water itself was black, so you couldn't even see through it when it was daylight. And when the sun started to rise a little at 6, it was still too dark to leave, so we had to stay in the house as the water is continuing to rise. Finally, when a little light came through, we grabbed air mattresses and pots because we needed something to paddle with. And we got in the water and we started to paddle on the air mattresses with the pots.
There were hundreds of other people facing the same predicament as Africa and her family. The bowl of New Orleans rapidly filled up. By the second day, 75% of the city was underwater and full of desperate survivors. Altogether, more than 1,300 people died, and hundreds of thousands were made homeless. The majority of them were poor and black. The American government was slow to respond to their plight.
We passed a lady in a hospital bed being pushed on the interstate. And all of a sudden, reality hits you of where you are and what's really happening to you. And this woman went to the hospital so that her life could be saved. And somehow she ended up on an interstate surrounded by a couple of thousand people being pushed with no medical attention anywhere.
After the first couple of days, we were calling this Lake New Orleans. There was water from here all the way that way to the Superdome, and then all the way to the Industrial Canal going east. And water here where I'm standing was over my head right here. It's a good place for a boat. But that'll show you how far the water got. I mean, this place is still devastated, you know? Look at the scum line. You can see on this truck right here and on these houses how high the water was down here.
Hey? Doing that show for Nova?
This house right here, there were 47 people in it when we pulled up. We got 47 people out of one house right here.
After the flood came fear, and the National Guard was called in. Now New Orleans really did look like a war zone.